When Evan got dumped, he didn't cry. He didn't smash things, drink himself into oblivion, or post long cryptic stories on Instagram. He just showed up at my apartment at 11:43 p.m. on a Tuesday night, holding a plastic grocery bag and a six-pack of cheap beer. "I'm staying here tonight," he said, walking past me without waiting for a response. I didn't even ask questions. That's how it had always been with us. He could crash on my couch or raid my fridge without needing to explain himself. We were best friends. Had been since sophomore year of high school, when we were both stuck in detention for different reasons. Me for skipping gym, him for punching a guy who called his sister a bitch. Evan was that kind of guy, loyal, a little reckless, and stubborn as hell. Also, impossibly hot. But I wasn't supposed to think about that last part. I shut the door behind him and followed him into the kitchen. He dropped the six-pack on the counter and pulled one out like he'd done it 100 times. Which, to be fair, he had. "You want to talk about it?" I asked. "Nope," he said, popping the tab and taking a long drink. "You got chips? Top cabinet. Behind the rice." He grabbed them without missing a beat, ripped the bag open, and sat down at my tiny kitchen table like we were having some casual late-night snack and not the aftermath of a serious breakup. "So," I said slowly, sitting across from him, "are you going to tell me what happened with Natalie, or do I have to guess?" He shrugged. "She said she needed someone more, emotionally available, whatever the hell that means." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you shut down again?" "I didn't shut down," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. "I just didn't want to talk about feelings every 5 minutes. She told you she loved you, and you said, 'Cool.'" He winced. "Okay, that might have been a little too chill." I snorted and leaned back in my chair. Evan ran a hand through his hair, the kind of lazy gesture that probably didn't mean anything to him, but always made something twist in my stomach. I didn't say anything. Didn't let it show. I never did. Instead, I watched him drink his beer and eat my chips like it was just another night. Like it didn't affect me every time he talked about a girl. Like I hadn't spent the last 4 years quietly, painfully in love with him. We hung out for another hour or so. Watched part of a movie. Talked about everything except the breakup. Eventually, he stretched out on the couch, yawned, and said, "Shit, this thing sucks. My neck's already killing me." "You can take the bed," I offered, too fast. Evan looked over at me. "What about you?" "I'll sleep on the couch." He narrowed his eyes. "Nah, I'm not kicking you out of your own bed. We can share." I blinked. "What?" He shrugged. "We've done it before." "Yeah," I said, heart suddenly pounding. "When we were like 19 and drunk at that cabin trip." "It's not a big deal," he said, already standing up. "Unless you're scared I'm going to snore in your ear." That wasn't what I was scared of. But I didn't argue. I didn't trust myself to say no. So I followed him into the bedroom, trying not to think about how long it had been since anyone had been in there with me. Trying not to think about what it meant to have Evan lying next to me again, in a bed barely big enough for two. He pulled off his shirt like it was nothing and dropped it on the floor. He had a new tattoo I hadn't seen before, something simple on his ribs. I tried not to stare. "Night," he said, flopping onto the bed. "Night," I echoed, turning off the light. The room went dark. The only sound was the soft hum of the heater and the faint city noise outside my window. I lay there, stiff as a board, trying to will myself to fall asleep, but all I could think about was how close he was, how his shoulder brushed mine every time he shifted, how I could feel the heat of his skin, even though we weren't touching yet. "Hey," he said suddenly, voice soft. I turned toward him. "Yeah?" He was staring at the ceiling. "Do you ever think we picked the wrong people?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," he said. "Just, we've known each other forever. We get each other. We hang out all the time. Maybe we miss something." My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid he could hear it. "Missed what?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He turned to face me. Even in the dark, I could feel his gaze. "I don't know," he said again, but this time it sounded different. Then he reached out, just lightly, his fingers brushing mine. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I don't know how long we stayed like that. His fingers barely touching mine, the room so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. Evan didn't move right away. Neither did I. It was like we'd both stepped onto thin ice and were waiting to see who'd crack it first. "Evan," I said finally, my voice rough. "What are you doing?" He didn't pull his hand away. Instead, his thumb shifted, brushing lightly against the side of my finger. A tiny movement. Almost nothing. But it sent a shock straight through me. "I don't know," he admitted. I keep thinking about what you said earlier." "I didn't say anything," I whispered. "Yeah, you did," he replied. "You just didn't use words." I turned my head toward him, my heart hammering. Even in the dark, I could make out the shape of his face, the line of his jaw, the way his brow was faintly furrowed like he was actually thinking, instead of deflecting with jokes for once. "Evie," I said carefully, "you just got out of a relationship." "I know." "And you're drunk." "Buzzed," he corrected. "Barely. And I'm your best friend." That finally made him turn fully onto his side, facing me. The bed shifted, bringing him closer. Too close. Close enough that I could smell his soap, feel the warmth of his breath. "Yeah," he said softly, "you are." There was something different in his voice. Less defensive, less cocky. It made my chest ache. "I don't want to mess this up," I said. He huffed out a quiet laugh. "You think I do?" Silence settled again, heavier this time. His hand was still there, still touching mine. I should have pulled away. I knew that. But after 4 years of swallowing everything I felt, of watching him date girls and complain about them to me, of being the safe place he landed every time something went wrong, I didn't have it in me. "Do you remember the cabin trip?" he asked suddenly. My throat tightened. "Yeah. When we shared a bed," he continued. "I couldn't sleep." I blinked. "You passed out in like 2 minutes." "That's what I wanted you to think," he said. "But I was awake most of the night." My heart stuttered. "Why?" He hesitated. I felt his fingers curl slightly, like he was grounding himself. "Because I kept thinking about how close you were," he said quietly, "and how I didn't hate it." I swallowed hard. Memories came flooding back, how stiff I'd been that night, terrified he'd feel how badly I wanted him, how I'd convinced myself it was just a stupid crush I'd outgrow. "You never said anything," I murmured. He scoffed under his breath. "Neither did you." That hit harder than I expected. "I thought you were straight," I said. "So did I," he replied. For a long time, the air between us felt charged, like one wrong move could set everything on fire. "I'm not saying I have everything figured out," Evan continued. "I don't. I just know that when Nat was telling me all the things she needed, all I could think was, I already have that. With you." My chest ached so badly it almost hurt to breathe. "You can't say stuff like that," I whispered. "Why?" "Because I've spent years pretending I don't feel anything," I admitted. "And you don't get to just drop this on me in the middle of the night and act like it doesn't change everything." He went quiet. I worried I'd pushed too hard. Then his hand moved. Not away, but closer. His fingers sliding into mine, fully this time, interlacing. Intentional. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to blindside you. I don't want to keep ignoring it." "Ignoring what?" I didn't ask. I already knew. My pulse raced as I turned onto my side, facing him completely. Our noses were inches apart now. If I leaned forward even a little, we'd be touching. "You ever think," I said slowly, "that maybe you're just lonely right now?" "Yeah," he said honestly. "I've thought about that all night." And it doesn't explain why I've felt this way for years." That made my breath catch. "For years?" I echoed. He nodded. I just didn't know what to do with it. You were safe. You didn't expect anything from me. And I was scared if I looked too closely, I'd ruin that. My chest tightened. You wouldn't have ruined it. He searched my face, like he was trying to read something he'd missed all this time. Then he lifted his free hand, hesitating just a second before gently touching my cheek. I froze. His thumb brushed along my jaw, tentative, like he was giving me time to pull away. I didn't. You okay? He whispered. I nodded, barely able to speak. Yeah, that was all the permission he needed. He leaned in slowly, not rushing, giving me every chance to stop him. Our lips touched softly, barely a kiss at all, but it felt like everything shifted in that moment. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't desperate. It was careful. He pulled back just slightly, his forehead resting against mine. Tell me if this is a mistake. I didn't hesitate. It's not. So he kissed me again, deeper this time. His hand tightened around mine, anchoring me. My other hand came up on its own, resting against his chest, feeling his heart racing just as hard as mine. It was real. All of it. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing harder. Holy shit, he murmured. I let out a shaky laugh. Yeah. He stayed close, his arm sliding around me, pulling me into his chest. I let myself settle there, my head against his shoulder, his warmth wrapping around me like it always had. Only now it meant something different. Stay, he said quietly. Please, I closed my eyes. I'm not going anywhere. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed that. I woke up before Evan did. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was, or rather, who I was with. Then I felt it. His arm heavy around my waist, his chest rising and falling against my back, his leg loosely hooked over mine like it belonged there. My heart started pounding all over again. Nothing about this felt rushed or chaotic in the way I'd always imagined crossing this line would be. It felt quiet, intimate, real in a way that scared the hell out of me. I lay there, completely still, afraid that if I moved, I'd break the spell. The early morning light slipped through the blinds, casting faint lines across the wall. Evan's breathing was slow, deep, peaceful. I couldn't remember the last time someone had slept this close to me. Carefully, I shifted just enough to turn my head. His face was relaxed in sleep, lashes resting against his cheeks, mouth slightly open. He looked younger like this. Softer. Not the confident, sarcastic guy everyone knew. Just Evan. My Evan. That thought hit me so suddenly, my chest tightened. I hadn't realized how long I'd been holding my breath until he stirred. His arm tightened around me instinctively, pulling me closer. My body responded before my brain could catch up, melting back into him. Mornin', he mumbled, voice low and rough with sleep. Morning, I replied softly. He didn't open his eyes right away. Just pressed his face into the back of my neck, breathing me in. I felt his lips brush my skin, not even a kiss, more like a reflex. You still here? He asked. I smiled faintly. Yeah. Good. He opened his eyes then, blinking against the light. When he registered how close we were, how tangled together, something unreadable crossed his face. Not regret. Something heavier. Hey, I said, turning slightly in his arms so I could see him better. You okay? He nodded, but slowly, thoughtfully. Yeah, just processing. Same. We stayed quiet for a bit, just looking at each other. It wasn't awkward, exactly, but there was a weight to it. Like we both understood that whatever this was, it wasn't something we could pretend didn't matter. You hungry? He asked finally. I snorted. You're deflecting. Absolutely, he said without shame. But also, yes, I'm starving. I laughed and carefully untangled myself from him, immediately missing the warmth when I sat up. Evan watched me, his expression soft but intense, like he was memorizing the moment. We moved into the kitchen together, both of us a little tentative now that it was daylight. The night had given us privacy, shadows to hide in. Morning made everything sharper. I started coffee while Evan leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me. You're doing that thing, I said. What thing? The staring, he smirked. Can't help it. Heat crept up my neck. "You're making it weird." "Too late," he said. "Pretty sure we crossed. Weird. About 12 hours ago." Coffee brewed. Toast popped. It felt surreal, how normal it all was. Like this was just another morning after another sleepover. Except it wasn't. "So," I said, leaning back against the counter. "What happens now?" He exhaled slowly. "I was hoping you'd answer that." I met his gaze. "I can't be your rebound." "I know," he said immediately, "and you're not. How can you be sure?" He pushed off the counter and stepped closer. Not crowding me, just close enough that I could feel his presence. Because this didn't start last night. Last night just stopped me from pretending it didn't exist. My heart thudded. "Evan!" "I'm serious," he continued. "I don't know what this makes me. I don't know what label fits, but I know I care about you in a way that goes way past convenience or loneliness." I swallowed hard. "You can't half-figure this out with me." "I won't," he promised. "If we do this, I want to do it right." There was that word again, if. I needed to know how far this went. "Does this change how you see yourself?" He hesitated. "Yeah, a little." "And that doesn't freak you out?" He gave a small, crooked smile. "Terrifies me." "Then why?" "Because the idea of walking away from this scares me more." Something inside me cracked open at that. I nodded slowly. "Okay." "Okay," he repeated. "Okay," I said again. "But we take it slow. We talk. No pretending this is casual." His shoulders relaxed, like he'd been bracing for a fight he didn't want. Deal. The rest of the morning passed in a strange, careful rhythm. We didn't touch much, but every glance felt loaded. Every shared smile meant more than it used to. Evan ended up staying longer than he planned. Then, longer still. By the time afternoon rolled around, we were sprawled on the couch, some dumb show playing in the background neither of us was watching. "This is weird," he murmured. I raised an eyebrow. "Now you're just realizing that?" "No," he said, shifting so his leg brushed mine. "I mean, it feels good, comfortable, like we skipped a step." I smiled softly. "We've known each other for almost 10 years. I think we earned that." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and leaned in. This kiss was different than the ones the night before. Less hesitant, more sure. His hand rested on my thigh, warm and grounding. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "I don't want to hide this." My stomach fluttered. "You don't have to decide everything today." "I know," he said, "but I also don't want to pretend you're just my roommate's couch or my breakup therapist." "I've always been more than that," I said quietly. He nodded. "I'm starting to see that." That night, he didn't sleep in my bed. Not because we didn't want to, but because something told us holding back, just a little, mattered. He crashed on the couch again, like old times. But before we went to sleep, he stood in my doorway, hesitating. "Hey," he said. "Yeah? I'm glad it was you." So was I. The next few days felt unreal in the quietest way possible. Nothing dramatic happened. No grand confessions. No sudden declarations to the world. Just small shifts that changed everything. Evan started staying over more often. Not every night, but enough that my apartment began to feel like ours instead of mine. His shoes appeared by the door. His hoodie ended up slung over the back of my chair. He replaced my cheap coffee with the good kind without saying anything. We didn't kiss much at first. When we did, it was brief. Careful. Like we were both afraid of moving too fast and losing our footing. But the tension was always there, humming beneath the surface. What surprised me most was how much we talked. Evan wasn't great at that, never had been. But he tried. He told me about Natalie, not in detail, but honestly. About how he'd felt like he was performing a version of himself that didn't quite fit. About how exhausted he'd been, pretending that discomfort was normal. I kept thinking something was wrong with me, he admitted one night, sitting beside me on the couch. like I was broken or incapable of giving enough. "You're not broken," I said immediately. He smiled faintly. "I know that now. Or at least, I'm getting there." He asked questions, too. About me. About what it had been like watching him date other people. About when I'd first realized I was in love with him. "That long?" he asked quietly when I told him. "Yeah," I said. "I didn't plan it, it just happened." He looked guilty. "I'm sorry." "You don't owe me an apology," I said. "I chose to stay." "I'm still sorry," he replied. "I wish I'd seen you sooner." That was new for him, owning regret instead of deflecting it. It made my chest ache in a different way. One night, after dinner and a few beers, he leaned back on the couch and stared at the ceiling. "Can I ask you something without it being weird?" he said. I snorted. "At this point, I think we're past, not weird." He smiled. "Fair." Then he turned his head toward me. "Do you think this changes how people see me?" The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. "Some people, maybe," I said carefully. "But the people who matter, they'll see you as you are." He nodded slowly. "I've spent my whole life being the guy everyone expects me to be." And I don't know how to stop doing that," he admitted. I reached over, resting my hand on his knee. "You don't have to figure it all out at once." He covered my hand with his. "I know. Just don't disappear on me if this gets messy." My throat tightened. "I'm not going anywhere." That night he kissed me first. It wasn't rushed or tentative. It was deliberate. His hand cupped the back of my neck, thumb brushing my skin like he was grounding himself in the moment. I kissed him back, slower, deeper, feeling the weight of everything unspoken between us. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. "This still scares me," he whispered. "Me too," I admitted. "But I want it," he said. "So do I." From then on, touching became easier, natural. His arm around my shoulders when we walked, his hand resting on my lower back without thinking. Falling asleep with our legs tangled, waking up with him pressed close. But with that closeness came something else. Fear. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that crept in during still moments. I noticed it the first time we ran into someone he knew. It was at the grocery store. Just a guy from his gym. Someone I'd seen around before. Evan stiffened almost imperceptibly when the guy waved. "Hey man," the guy said. "Didn't know you lived around here." "Yeah," Evan replied, voice casual but tight. "Just helping a friend shop." "Friend?" The word hit harder than it should have. I didn't say anything in the store. I waited until we were back in the car, groceries forgotten in the back seat. "Is that what I am?" I asked quietly. Evan froze. "What?" "A friend," I said. "Because if that's all I'm ever going to be in public—" "No," he said quickly. "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" He rubbed a hand over his face, frustration flickering across his features. I panicked. That hurt more than I expected. "I'm not asking you to come out to the world," I said carefully, "but I can't go backwards either." "I know," he said. I'm not ready yet." I nodded, even though my chest felt tight. "Okay." But that night, lying awake beside him, I realized something important. This wasn't just about whether Evan could accept me. It was about whether he could accept himself. And I didn't know how long that would take, or what it would cost us in the meantime. I didn't bring it up again the next day, or the day after that. Not because it didn't matter, but because I needed time to figure out whether I was hurt or afraid. The truth was probably both. Evan noticed, though. He always did when I pulled back, even just a little. He started compensating in small ways. Cooking dinner without being asked. Reaching for my hand when we were alone. Leaving earlier in the morning so it wouldn't look like he'd stayed over, but texting me the second he got outside. Made it to the car. "Miss you already." Those messages hit harder than I wanted them to. One night, about a week later, he showed up at my place after work looking exhausted. Not just tired, worn down. He kicked off his shoes, dropped his bag by the door, and leaned his forehead against my shoulder without saying a word. I wrapped my arms around him instinctively. "Rough day." He nodded. "Can we just sit for a minute?" We ended up on the couch, his head in my lap, my fingers tracing idle patterns through his hair. It was something I'd done 1,000 times before, back when this was all platonic, but now it felt charged in a different way. "I keep screwing this up," he said quietly, my hands stilled. "What?" "This," he said, gesturing vaguely between us. "You, me, all of it. You're not screwing it up," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure I believed that. He looked up at me, eyes tired and honest. "I don't want to hurt you." "Then don't," I replied gently. He let out a humorless laugh. "It's not that simple." "Then talk to me," I said. "Please." He hesitated, then sat up, turning to face me fully. I've spent my whole life knowing exactly who I was supposed to be, what people expected from me, and I was good at it, comfortable even. "And now?" I asked. "And now everything feels off balance," he admitted. "Like I finally stopped lying to myself, but I don't know how to live without the lie yet." That landed heavy. "I don't need you to be perfect," I said. "I just need to know I'm not something you're ashamed of." He flinched. "I'm not." "Then why does it feel like I disappear when other people are around?" He didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened, eyes dropping to his hands. "I'm scared," he said finally. "Not of you, of losing everything else." I nodded slowly. "That's honest." "Is it enough?" he asked. I didn't answer right away because that was the question I'd been avoiding. "I don't know," I said truthfully. "But I don't want to be your secret forever." He reached for my hand, squeezing it. "I don't want that either." The next test came sooner than either of us expected. It was his sister's birthday. He mentioned it casually one morning, like it was no big deal. "We're doing a thing at my parents' place Saturday. Barbecue. Family, a few friends." I felt my stomach tighten. "Okay." He glanced at me. "You could come, if you want." That if again. "As what?" I asked. He swallowed. "As you." That didn't actually answer my question. "I don't want to walk into that blind," I said carefully. "Does your family know?" "No," he admitted. "Not like this." "And you want me there?" "I want you with me," he said. "But I don't know if I'm ready to explain everything." I leaned back against the counter, exhaling slowly. "Evan, that's a lot to put on me." "I know," he said quickly. "And if it's too much, say no. I don't want to force anything." I studied him for a long moment. The fear in his eyes was real. So was the hope. "I'll come," I said finally. "But I won't pretend I'm just your buddy." He nodded. "Okay." Saturday came faster than I wanted it to. The drive to his parents' house was quiet. Evan's hand rested on my thigh the whole way, grounding himself as much as me. When we pulled into the driveway, his grip tightened. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "As I'll ever be." The backyard was already full. Laughter, music, the smell of grilled food. His mom spotted him immediately and rushed over, pulling him into a hug. "There you are," she said. Then she noticed me. "And you must be?" Evan hesitated for half a second too long. "This is," he started. I felt the familiar drop in my chest. "My partner," he finished, voice firm. Something shifted in the air. His mom blinked, surprised, but not upset. "Oh," she said softly, then smiled. "Well, it's lovely to meet you." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. The rest of the afternoon wasn't perfect. There were curious looks, awkward pauses, one uncle who stared a little too long. But Evan didn't pull away, didn't correct anyone, didn't pretend. At one point, when someone asked how we met, he said, "We've been friends for years," and glanced at me with a small smile. Turns out, that wasn't the whole story. Later, when we were alone by the fence, he leaned in close and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me." I looked at him, really looked at him. The fear was still there, but so was something else. Resolve. "I'm proud of you," I said. He swallowed hard. "I was terrified." "I know," I said, "but you didn't run." That night, back at my place, he kissed me like he meant it. Like something had finally clicked into place. And for the first time since this all began, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we were moving forward instead of sideways. Something changed after that night. Not all at once. Not in a dramatic, movie-worthy way, but in the way that matters more, the quiet certainty that settled between us. Evan stopped hesitating when he touched me. His hand would find mine without that flicker of doubt. He started introducing me without pausing first, without scanning the room for reactions. Sometimes it was just, "This is him," said with a soft smile that made my chest ache in the best way. And sometimes it was harder. The world didn't magically become kinder just because Evan had taken a step forward. A guy at his gym made a joke one afternoon. Not even overtly cruel, just careless. Something about experimenting and phases. Evan laughed it off in the moment, but later that night he was quiet, distant, staring at nothing. I found him sitting on the edge of my bed, elbows on his knees. "You want to talk about it?" I asked. He shook his head. "I don't want to give it more space." "Then don't shut me out either," I said gently. He exhaled slowly and leaned back, letting himself fall against the mattress. I lay down beside him, turning onto my side. "I didn't realize how loud the world gets when you stop fitting into it," he said quietly. I nodded. "Yeah, it doesn't whisper." He turned his head toward me. "How did you do it? When you came out?" I swallowed. "Poorly." That got a small smile out of him. "I lost people," I continued. "Some quietly, some loudly. But I also found out who actually cared, and it was worth it?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "Yes." He stared at the ceiling again, jaw tight. "I don't want to resent you." My chest tightened. "You won't, but I might resent myself," he admitted, "for not being braver sooner." I reached up, cupping his cheek, turning his face toward mine. "You don't get to punish yourself for surviving the only way you knew how." His eyes softened. "You're too good at this." "At what?" "Understanding me." I smiled faintly. "We've had years of practice." That night, we didn't rush into anything physical. We stayed wrapped around each other, limbs tangled, talking until the words ran out. Falling asleep felt less like escape and more like arrival. But even good progress has growing pains. A few weeks later, Evan got a call from Natalie. He answered it without thinking. I could tell from the way his shoulders stiffened. "Hey," he said cautiously. I didn't hear her side of the conversation, but I heard enough. I didn't plan it. No, it wasn't cheating. I didn't turn into anything. By the time he hung up, his face was tight with frustration. "She knows," he said. I nodded. I figured she would eventually. "She wasn't kind about it." "I'm sorry." He sat down beside me heavily. "She asked if you were the reason we broke up." And I told her no, he said. That the reason was me lying to myself. That mattered more than I expected. "She said I used her," he continued. "Like she was a placeholder." I winced. "That's rough." "I didn't mean to," he said quickly. "I really cared about her." "I know," I said. "But intent doesn't erase impact." He looked at me, searching my face. "Does that bother you?" I thought about it honestly. It would, if you didn't own it. But you are. He let out a long breath. God, this is exhausting. Yeah, I said softly. But you're doing it. Later that night we argued. Not about Natalie. About something stupid. Dishes. Or laundry. Or the fact that Evan kept leaving his shoes in the middle of the hallway like my apartment was suddenly his too. I snapped. He snapped back. You don't get to move in without asking, I said. I practically live here already. That doesn't mean you do. Silence followed, sharp and uncomfortable. Evan stared at me, breathing hard. Is that what this is about? What? You think I'm taking over, he said, that I don't respect your space. I hesitated. I think? I'm scared you'll disappear if this gets too real. That stopped him cold. I'm not going anywhere, he said firmly. You don't know that, I replied. This is still new for you. For me. It's not. He softened then, anger dissolving into something quieter. You think I'll wake up one day and decide this was a mistake. I think you're still learning how to exist in this, I said, and I don't want to lose myself trying to make it easier for you. He stepped closer, resting his forehead against mine. I don't want you to shrink for me. Then don't ask me to. I'm not, he said. I swear. We stood there for a long moment, breathing each other in. I love you, he said suddenly. The words hit me like a wave. You don't have to say it back, he added quickly. I needed you to know. I swallowed hard, emotion clogging my throat. I love you too. His eyes filled, not with fear this time, but with relief. That night, we made love for the first time, without hesitation or doubt. Not frantic, not desperate. Slow, intentional, full of all the trust we'd been building, piece by piece. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets, he traced circles on my chest. I don't feel lost tonight, he murmured. I kissed his temple. Good. Because for the first time, neither did I. The first time Evan said it out loud in public, my brain almost short-circuited. We were at a friend's birthday dinner. One of my friends, not his, and the table was crowded and loud and full of overlapping conversations. Someone asked if the seat next to Evan was taken. He didn't even look at me when he said it. My boyfriend's sitting there. Boyfriend? The word landed softly, but it echoed. I felt it in my chest before my brain caught up. Evan glanced at me then, just briefly, like he was checking to see if I'd flinch or smile or freeze. I smiled. He smiled back, subtle but sure. That was it. No announcement. No big moment. Just truth, spoken like it belonged there. Later that night, when we were walking home, I nudged his shoulder. You know you just dropped a bomb, right? He smirked. Yeah? You didn't even warn me. I didn't want to make it a thing, he said. It just is. I stopped walking, turning to face him. Are you okay? He nodded, no hesitation this time. Yeah, I really am. That didn't mean everything magically got easier after that. Some people drifted. A couple of friends went quiet. One guy Evan had known since college stopped replying altogether. His dad didn't say much at first. Just nodded, stiff and polite. But his mom hugged us both like she was trying to make up for it. There were nights Evan spiraled. Wondered if he'd waited too long. If he'd hurt people beyond repair. If he was allowed to be happy when the path there wasn't clean. And there were nights I struggled too. Not because I doubted him, but because loving someone who was still learning how to exist openly meant being patient in ways that tested me. It meant trusting that his fear wasn't a reflection of his feelings. It meant speaking up when something hurt instead of swallowing it like I used to. We learned. Slowly. Sometimes clumsily. Sometimes painfully. We argued about stupid things. About space. About whose turn it was to make plans. About whether Evan was actually ready to move in, or just pretending he was because he didn't want to lose me. That one was a real fight. I'm not asking you to rush. I said, standing in my kitchen, arms crossed. I'm asking you to be honest. I am being honest, he snapped. No, I shot back. You're being agreeable. That stopped him. He went quiet, then sat down heavily at the table. I'm scared, he admitted, that if we make this official, I won't be able to hide when things get hard. You don't get to hide anymore, I said gently. Not from me. He looked up at me, eyes tired, but clear. Then I want this. Fully. Even if it scares me. So we did it right. Not impulsively, not dramatically. We talked about expectations. Boundaries. What it meant to share a space without losing ourselves. We set timelines that could change without being broken promises. 3 months later, he moved in. Not all at once. Just a few boxes at first. Clothes. Books. That hoodie of his I'd already claimed as mine. Then more. Slowly, my apartment stopped feeling like mine alone. One night, months later, we were lying in bed, limbs tangled, the window cracked open to let in cool air. Evan traced absent circles on my arm. You ever think about how close I came to losing this? He asked quietly. Sometimes, I admitted. I almost didn't come over that night, he said. I sat in my car for 10 minutes arguing with myself. My chest tightened. What made you come in? You, he said simply. I knew if I didn't, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. I turned toward him, resting my forehead against his. I'm glad you knocked. He smiled softly. Me too. Now, when I look back on that night, the beer, the couch, the way his fingers brushed mine, I realized something. Love didn't crash into us like a storm. It unfolded. It asked questions, forced honesty, required patience. It demanded that Evan choose himself, and that I stop settling for almost. We didn't become something new overnight. We became something true. And every morning I wake up next to him, sleepy, unguarded, fully himself. I know we made the right choice, because this was never a mistake.